All right, welcome in. We are live.
Hey.
So, Lester, anything happen with you in the last week or so that was, an enormous amount of work or anything like that?
Oh yeah, it's always fun. The NFL draft time is always a fun time for us. Content creators. I mean, that's bread and butter. It's what we live for. We love that kind of stuff, but it's a lot of work, man. It's like, it's. I took off the real job. I didn't work there Thursday, Friday because I knew I'd be a lot of prep work and stuff, and there's only so much you can do pre-game and get that going. So just a rough day of writing. Like I feel like I was playing something.
It was, I took off time so that I could go to Kansas City and be at the
Yeah.
draft. You took off time so that you could run the site. There's other people that had to clear their schedules. Jacob obviously was doing crazy man work, right? I mean, so there was, Robert flew out to New York, right? Like, I mean, there's a lot going on with our little
A
crew.
lot.
There's a lot of stuff that we were going. I got to see EJ while I was down there. So he was prepping with Brett. So I got to meet Brett. Believe it or not, I have not met Brett in person yet. So that was the first time with that. And so it's just, it's all this stuff that's going on. And, it was very different for us because last year we live streamed all of day 2.
We did, yeah.
We did. Bears didn't have a first round pick, so we live streamed all of day 2, and Robert and I, and then you were like popping in and out, and like we were just getting a lot of oh, okay, this is cool. It was like, oh, we'll probably do the same thing this year. Very different year, right? We're all kind of going in different directions, and we had the live actual in-person party that Mason and Danny ran. So that was a cool.
That was a lot of fun. Yeah, I had that on the whole time, just kind of listening to what was going on there. It was just, it's hard to kind of jump in at all. So I didn't even bother. You jumped in on the show late, which was kind of cool to get your perspective from KC. You seemed like you're retired, man. That was a long day for you.
Holy smokes, it was a very long day.
Yeah.
It was, I mean, this is not something that I'm used to. I'm never going to probably be used to being, credentialed NFL media. I still have it right here. That's pretty cool, right? Might have to hold this one back.
Yeah.
But it was, get up early in the morning, drive down to Kansas City. It was insane. Like just to try to find like a parking spot was crazy. And then, I mean, I parked near my hotel. And so then I had like a mile walk to get down there. And I was like, can I bring a bag? I know they have like the clear bag policy, but I'm going to be media. So am I going to be okay? Right. So I took my bag because I wanted to have my computer and everything on it. And I was in like my full dress clothes because I was going to the red carpet. So I'm walking with my bag, dressed up to the red carpet show. And then I did that whole thing, which was a really interesting experience. It was fun, but it was probably not what I expected. And then did the draft experience for a little bit, caught up with an old work colleague for a bit, talked to him, and then made my way down to the media room, which was a whole thing to get into that. And the media room was a little bit of a letdown. I watched the first half of the first round in the media room. Nice people around, but they all kind of have their crew, and I was just by myself, right? And so I expected maybe a little bit more reactions from people, maybe not like the draft experience that was going down on the hill or anything, but like a little bit more. But people were just buttoned up. They were editing stuff from before, or they're working. They're waiting for the pick. They don't care who it is. They just, if the guy's here, they're going to mobilize to try to get something so they can get on. They're going to write their story. Like they're on deadline, here I am like, hey, what do you think? Hey, what do you think? Just wasn't great. I met Laura Screeden, the Bears personality. She's very nice. She complimented the bow tie, so that was good. It had a wood bow tie for those of you that saw that.
I actually used your picture on the red carpet for a couple articles. It was the lead article.
You're like, well, who is this guy?
Yeah, I forgot to ask you permission, but I credit the photographer properly on the thing. So I figured, what's he gonna say?
Well, I appreciate that. No, so yeah, and then I thought, you know what? I think I might actually get more if I just walk. Hey, the Bears have already made their pick. We'll get into that. Darnell Wright wasn't there, right? So 17 guys came to the draft. if they get picked, they then eventually make their way over to the hotel we were at and have a little press conference room. And maybe I can get in there, maybe I can't, or maybe I can just be outside and try to, get something. He wasn't there. Right. So it was like, well, okay, that's kind of a bummer. So then I just decided everybody's wearing a jersey. Everybody on the hill, they're wearing their jersey. So Bears, any fan base is easy to identify. You're probably not wearing a Cowboys jersey if you're a Bears fan, right? So tons of Bears, Urlacher, Hester, right? So I just would walk up to Bears fans and I'd be like, hey, what do you think of the first pick? Hey, what do you think? And I just made my way back to my hotel by talking to probably 12 different Bears fans. So that was pretty good. And then by the time I got back to the hotel room, I actually got checked in because I couldn't get checked in until late. I realized I had a little bit of time in the first round, popped onto the draft party. And yeah, I probably sounded pretty tired, but I also realized I really wanted to hop on the live stream and talk to these guys because that's looked like they were having fun and wanted to participate in that. So cool night all the way around. And then I came back and tried to catch up on some sleep the next day. It's been a very long 10 weeks professionally for me, capped off by an event like that. So but yeah, I don't know. Do you want to get into a podcast?
Let's record a podcast here. It's Sunday afternoon. Let's do it.
So we're going to try to go through all our categories here, guys. You feel free to pop in some questions and comments. We'll stick around after, but we're going to take the draft class and we're going to put them through our normal categories. We're going to see how this works. So
it's work in progress. We kind of may have to pop around a little bit, but I think we'll get it. Like I said earlier, we're pros, man. We're pros now. We've been doing this for a long time. We'll power through.
The categories work.
They work.
Trust in the categories. All right, let's get it going. Welcome to Bear and Balance. I'm Jeff Berckes, a writer for Windy City Gridiron, and I'm joined by the editor of that fine website, Lester A. Wiltfong Jr. Lester, the 2023 NFL Draft is in the books. Ryan Poles has made his selections. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I mean, I haven't had a chance to talk to you in a while. We haven't done a show here since I think we did a free agency preview, but it's been a while. So it's good to get back on the mic and kind of talk with you a little bit here. And then we got the NFL draft here to talk about, and the Bears, did they hit a home run? I mean, the national pundits, they seem to like what the Bears did. I know fans are pretty excited. So it's a good time to be a Bears fan now because we have a lot of hope with a lot of prospects in this 10-man class.
Yeah, so I think we have to at least start off by putting in perspective that the Bears draft started by making the trade out of the number 1 overall pick down to number 9 with the Carolina Panthers, who ended up taking a very diminutive quarterback with their first selection. So good luck to them. I stood right next to him. He's not the biggest guy in the world. I don't know how he's going to hold up, but good luck to them. And they traded down to 9. They got DJ Moore in the process and some picks into the future. We'll talk about that a little bit. And then the Bears, when it got to pick 9, there was a couple guys on the board, one of which was Jalen Carter. We talked a lot about Jalen Carter throughout this draft process. It kind of came down to, we were hearing if he's on the board, Pole's going to make that pick. He's going to pull the trigger. He's going to be a Chicago Bear. Get ready for it. And he's on the board, and he did get drafted 9th, but not by the Bears. Moves down to the number 10 overall spot, just moving down 1 spot, pick up a 4th rounder in next year's draft from the Philadelphia Eagles. So the Eagles take Carter, which honestly is a fantastic place for him to land. Probably the best possible scenario for him in terms of veteran leadership around him. The fact that they don't have to get a ton of snaps out of him right away because they have good infrastructure there. And the Bears take their guy, Darnell Wright, at 10 overall. So what was your first reaction, Lester, to the trade down? And what was your reaction to Darnell Wright as an offensive tackle for the Chicago Bears?
When the trade first happened, I was a little annoyed at the trade itself. I'm like, what's happening here? I didn't quite understand it at the time. Again, in the moment of the draft, we're all fans. Oh my God, what's happening? Eagles, of course, wanted Carter. That was the big buzz, leading up to the draft, that there was no way that Jalen Carter would get past the Eagles. And the Eagles made sure of that by trading up to the Bears. So initially, I'm like, oh my God, what's going on? But then when they got Darnell Wright, who was the guy that I wanted to get all along, I thought he was going to be their pick in a trade back. Somehow, some way, I just figured that'd be the guy. Right tackle, perfect, a perfect fit. The Bears need a right tackle. Boom, Darnell Wright's the best right tackle in the draft. A lot of national analysts said he's the best tackle in the draft. So they're getting an outstanding pass blocker. His run blocking is inconsistent, I guess the best way to put it. But when he's on in the run game, he's a mauler. The problem is technique thing. Again, he's a college athlete. He'll clean it up in the pros. The Bears will work on that. But I'm excited. I like Darnell Wright as a player. I think it's a good move for the Bears. I think the trade back itself, I think it's fair to say that Ryan Poles fleeced Howie Roseman. He had no intention on drafting Jalen Carter, and he made that clear. It was a personality thing. It was a character thing. I think Jalen Carter is in a perfect spot in Philly, and he will be an outstanding football player. He's got a good support system there. Just wasn't going to be a fit in Chicago, and Ryan Poles kind of made that known leading up to the whole process. So, but the fact that he got a 4th-round pick basically for nothing, just for a bluff, saying, "Hey, man, if you don't come up and get Carter, we're going to trade back and let someone else come get Carter." Knowing Poles had no intention of doing that. You got a 4th-round pick out of it. Wright and Carter will always be talked about together. I think it's unfair, but that's just how it is with the NFL draft and with fans and analysts.
Yeah, it's a good point about the trade down because it's only one. So why do you do that? And if you're Howie Roseman, well, I'll call their bluff. They're not going to do that, or they're not going to trade out. But for Ryan Poles, he wanted a little bit more. You could tell that he wanted a little bit more out of that pick. But if he goes back too far, he might lose out on all of these tackle prospects, right? Maybe he liked Paris Johnson and Darnell Wright, but maybe he didn't like Broderick Jones, the 3rd tackle that people talk about, right? So maybe he thought, if I go back too far and I know, say, the Steelers want to come up and take a tackle, then I might be boxed out of my own pick. And if I get out of this first round by getting too cute and drop off too far down and don't get a tackle, then all of this was for naught. I have to get out of this first round with the tackle because maybe I don't like what I see later on in the draft. So I think that I don't know what the other conversations were, or if there was another trade package on. We heard that Steelers wanted to come up. They were motivated to trade up to be able to land the tackles that they ended up doing that for. So was that on the table? And Poles said, you know what, I'd rather have just a morsel, just an after dinner mint 4th-round pick next year that I can put in my pocket and I can cash that in later, but I still get my guy, and I know I get my guy because I know how he's coming up for Jalen Carter. So I think it was well done because I think that Darnell Wright was the obvious best pick, particularly with who was on the board and who was off the board at that point. I don't know if I have a big preference between Paris Johnson and Darnell Wright, just because Paris Johnson might give you some of that flexibility to move him to the left. Darnell Wright, absolutely, there's no question what he's going to do. He's going to come in and he's going to be your starter at right tackle. Big guy, he's 6'5", which, for a tackle, that's just kind of average, but playing at 330, 335, maybe even higher last year, but really incredible athlete. A very fast 40-yard dash for a man that size, basically five seconds flat. And his splits were really good too. So he's an incredible athlete. Pass pro, the best. Everybody's just like, this guy's just a stud. And you think he's this huge guy, so he's going to be this road grader. He's not. He's that dancing bear that people talk about. So in a very interesting chain of events here, the Bears have a right tackle who projects as being an incredible pass blocker and maybe a guy who needs to work a little bit on run blocking, and a left tackle who's actually an incredible run blocker, but probably needs to work a little bit on his pass blocking, in Braxton Jones. That's your bookends. That's the guys that you're going to roll out here this year. And that's kind of flip from what a lot of people would say is standard. Yeah, the old school thing. But I think that we are entering the level of conversation that we need to have, that right tackles and left tackles are both incredibly important, and there's no real difference between why they're so important. Quarterbacks don't just stand in the pocket and look to the right side of the field and not look to their left, right? So, the blind side can change depending on where the quarterback's field of vision is at any given time. They're both incredibly important. They both have to protect the edge. It's just a matter of how you're going to give them help. And so I think that those traditional thoughts should be going by the wayside, but this guy does project here clearly on the right side.
I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, top defenses, they used to always rush their best guy against the quarterback's blind side, which is over the left tackle for the most part. But that's just changed. I mean, the Bosa's, Von Miller, Khalil Mack, all the top edge rushers in the NFL go against the right tackle because that's the perception is he's the lesser of a pass blocker. But think of it from a quarterback's perspective. If you drop back to pass and you're going to throw and there's pressure from your blind side, let's say the quarterback doesn't see it, he doesn't sense it, but he still gets the pass off. Now, let's say there's a rush coming from in his field of vision. That's going to spook him more than the thing he has no idea going on behind him. So you need to have quality right tackle protecting it. That's why the stuff up the middle is so important. That's why some teams value that up the middle pressure, because you want to spook the quarterback as quickly as possible. What's the best way to do it? Pressure up the gut. Pressure off the right edge will spook him as well because that's in his field of vision. Plus, with Justin Fields, he's a scrambling quarterback. He's going to roll out quite a bit. It's a natural to roll out to the right side. You got a nimble right tackle there. I think this is, like I said, it's a win-win for the Bears. This is exactly what they needed. I like Braxton Jones' upside. Like you said, he's got to work on his pass blocking. He's got to work on his anchor. That's the Bill Rush, killed them all last year. He's doing it. He's in the lab this whole offseason. He's working on that kind of stuff. I'm excited to see Braxton Jones in year 2.
Yeah, absolutely. Really also starting to get a sense of what this offensive line is going to look like.
Yep.
They did not draft a center, so that talk about Lucas Patrick and Cody Whitehair being the combination moving forward at center looks like that's going to happen, folks. Right? You have Nate Davis, who's going to man the right guard line. We got some confirmation that is the plan. We heard some people kind of saying the other way, which never made sense to me. So Nate Davis comes in as the right, and Tevin Jenkins is going to learn left guard. So Jenkins has been all over the line, basically everywhere with center. But that's likely your best 5 is going to come from that group there. So that's interesting. We're starting to get a little bit of clarity there, and I think that you can imagine that is going to be a much improved situation from last year, particularly if Cody can keep himself healthy. I think that'll be important.
Yeah, that's key. He's got to stay healthy. Obviously, he was having a pretty nice season last year. Then he hurt his knee, and it seemed like the Bears may have rushed him back a bit because when he came back, he was just his first half, second half splits awful. He just wasn't very good in the second half. And again, we kind of talked about that a little bit, a couple years ago, how there might have been an injury because he just didn't look like the same Cody Whitehair. We're not talking about a over the hill guy. He's I think 30 this year, so he's kind of right there at that point where it's it could be tipping the other way, but he's an interior lineman. Those guys can play into their 30s. So I think Cody Whitehair, I think he's your center. Lucas Patrick's going to be here as your top interior reserve. So just that starting 5, if they all kind of max out their potential, this is on paper has the chance to be a pretty decent unit, which hasn't happened in Chicago in a while.
Yeah, you look at a guy like Roberto Garza, famously played guard for a long time, and then when Olin Kreutz left, he slid into center and played that pivot for a few years before he retired. So there's a way for a guard to kind of continue his career. Whitehair played center earlier, so again, I always thought he was a natural guard, but you can kind of maybe guard's not going to work for him anymore. He's been sapped a little bit with the athleticism. Put him at center, and then you get that. You get the brain, right? Like he does a good job with the line calls, so you don't have to worry about that. With a new offensive line coming together, he can be that leadership piece as well. So I think it can work. I believe in the plan. Let's do double dip into Trent Tribute and a double dip at the defensive tackle position in this draft for Ryan Poles. He goes with Gervon Dexter Sr. from Florida.
Is it Gervon or Jervon? I've heard it pronounced several different ways.
Jervon, I think, is probably right. That makes more sense. And then Zach with 2 C's, Pickens from South Carolina at pick 64. So a couple of big guys to try to take care of this run defense, if nothing else, and hopefully get some interior pass rush with those interior defensive tackle positions. What do you think of these 2 guys?
The knock on Dexter obviously coming out was a slow get off. Every scouting report about Dexter was slow get off. And then of course Ryan Poles addressed that right away at the post day 2 presser. He talks about how that was the scheme the Florida Gators asked him to play. It was a more read and react. I think he called it a mirror scheme. Every coach calls things different. When I was in high school, when I played D line, we had something called the lock on technique, and it was basically the same thing. We weren't supposed to penetrate. We had to stand there, lock onto our guy in front of us, control both gaps. That was just I hated it. It was just stupid to me. But that's what Dexter says. It's a pulse that he had. You know, you look at his tape from earlier in his Florida career, it was a little more able to attack the gap stuff. But so we'll see. He has the athleticism, obviously, to be a much better player, to have a much better get off. He has a 10-yard split really high. You know, he's a big, strong athlete. So we'll see how that goes. And then with Pickens, I didn't know much about Pickens during the pre-draft process until Taylor Dahl interviewed the South Carolina Gamecock beat reporter. His name escapes me, but you know, he talked highly of Zach Pickens, how he was thinking about coming out a year ago. He decided to stay in one more year, work on his pass rush moves, and he did that. And he became better against the pass. He was always good against the run, worked on his pass rush. That helped there. So these are two guys. They're probably not going to start as rookies just because the Bears spent a lot of money on their D-line in free agency at their spots, but they'll both be in rotation. They'll both be in there. I think Dexter probably is more of a 0 tech naturally. Pickens more of a 3 tech naturally. And I think that's what the Bears need. The Bears need bodies up front. This team could not stop the run for anything last year. These guys are both pretty good against the run. This definitely makes this team better.
Yeah, modern NFL, you're looking to get 7 or 8 defensive linemen to have a rotation. You don't have, 4 guys that soak up 90% of the snaps and a couple guys that come in every once in a while. Like, you have guys that you want them fresh. You want to send waves after that offensive line that has to play every snap, right? And then they get tired. So you want to have these guys fresh. So you need a lot of bodies. And I want to let's football 101 this mirror technique a little bit, right? So you talk about 1 gap, 2 gap stuff, right? So as a defensive lineman, if your responsibility is like you have the B gap, right? So you have the gap between the guard and the tackle, and it's your job to basically attack half the man. Like, you're trying to win by a rip or a punch or like some sort of move to separate your man from the gap that you're supposed to be in, so that if a run play comes your way, you're good to go. Or if it's a pass, you read that it's not a run, you're already past that blocker and now you're rushing the quarterback. This idea of mirroring or a 2 gap or whatever is like you're taking that guy up head on. Like, you're trying to you're not attacking half the man, you're attacking the whole man, and you're trying to control the point of attack, because if you see a run coming to your left, you'll shuck the guy to your right, and then now you're in the gap to the left, or vice versa. So it's more of a run defense technique than anything. You're not going to get upfield by doing that unless you're just going to straight bull rush and maybe collapse and get a little pressure that way. So is that a really good way to use a guy like Dexter, who seems like a super athlete, who seems like he maybe is the type of guy that you would want to be attacking the half man and to be able to try to get upfield and penetrate? No, that's not how I would use that guy, but I'm not a college coach. Like, I'm not going to question, I am going to question the the decisions that these guys make, but it may just be, well, like, this is my defensive philosophy. Yeah. These are the best guys that I have. You're going to play my technique. And that's what it is. Now, that may have hurt his draft stock a little bit, but he also bought in and did what he was asked to do. And if you're asked to mirror, or if you're asked to just control this gap, you might not even be looking at the football on the snap. You might be looking at the guard. And so you're waiting for that guard to move, and you're waiting, and then that's how you're going to win that rep. So, you're waiting for him to take a step laterally, right? Like, so you take that step laterally with him. So it's just an interesting thing, because everybody then exploded. Like, he's so slow off the ball. He's so slow off the ball. And it's like, well, okay, but that doesn't really track with all this testing that we see of this incredible athlete. So what is it? Is he just slow off the ball, or is it a technique thing? Very interesting. It's a very interesting conversation. And hopefully that, I don't know, football 101 from old defensive lineman talk helps here, but that's not how I would use him. Like, that's how you use like a big slow guy.
Ted Washington. That's his move. Yeah.
Yeah. Cause he just did the blockers. Yeah. Fascinating stuff.
Our guy Buckastats, Quentin Crisco on Twitter, he actually had a nice video that he did, and he kind of broke down some of his play, and he pointed out that when he was over the nose, when he was playing the 0 to 1 tech, and he's right there on the center, his get off was a little quicker. When he was, like you mentioned, out to the guard where he was waiting, again, the technique thing. He's not watching the ball; he's watching the man, and then he's a little slower to react. He's waiting for the guard to move. His get off seemed a little slower. And then we talk about the whole mirror thing. A lot of fans were mirroring what they were reading on things. A lot of fans just kind of spread that through social media. Oh, this pick sucks because he's slow off the ball. Half these guys, probably more, never watched them play a second of college football. They read the reports. They heard people talking. So now they parroted everything they heard, and now they kind of spreads around how he's so slow off the ball. You got to dig a little deeper. That's why it was cool what Q did, on video. Robert Schmitz did a video too, a breakdown of it as well, kind of showing some of his stuff he does. And he's strong, powerful. He was in the same high school class as Jalen Carter. Dexter was rated the better defensive tackle at the time. So the Bears are getting a pretty good prospect here. We'll see how they use him. We'll see how he kind of adapts to the one gap stuff, but it's exciting. And then with Pickens, again, he seems like he has more of that explosive first step, and another great athlete for the size, big, strong guy, good against the run, worked on his pass rush moves. These two guys could be, linchpins of this defense, for a while now.
There are plenty of examples of really good or great NFL players who were misused in college. Yeah. And, like once they get to the pros and they're used in the correct way, then they're able to flourish. Let's hope that that's the case here. This is still a premium pick. This is a day 2 pick. Yeah. So, this is good investment here by Ryan Poles, but you may have a situation where you got a guy for a lot cheaper in draft capital than you otherwise would have, because he was maybe misused in Florida in the name of technique, in the name of scheme, I should say. All right, let's move on to our next category. We spent a lot of time on trench trivia, but it's been a while.
It is the trenches. We're excited.
Meat and potatoes draft. This is exactly what we wanted. So let's get into the tweet of the week. Sweet tweets. I will start off. Courtney Cronin at Courtney R. Cronin says, Bears planning to work Tyreek Stevenson at outside corner, and his football knowledge stood out to the coaches per cornerbacks coach John Hoke. He's done a good job of learning the defense. It's been quick for him. So this is the other second round draft pick. Ryan Poles traded up to be able to secure Tyreek Stevenson, the corner out of Miami. I thought it was pretty cool that Devin Hester read the name, right? Famous Miami alum, to be able to read the name off here. I'm hoping that there's currently a player on the roster that has the number 23 assigned to him. I don't think that player will make the roster. Maybe Stevenson moves over to number 23. That might be a kind of cool homage to Devin there from another Miami alum. But a physical corner, I think we're getting a sense of what Ryan Poles wants in his secondary, but a willing tackler and a very physical presence in the run game. What did you think of the Stevenson pick?
I didn't do a much. I can't scout everybody. I'm not EJ. I'm not Jacob. I can't scout the 400 prospects. So I kind of look at guys I think might fit in the Bears range. I didn't think they're going to go corner in the second round. So I didn't do a lot of looking at corners at this part here. So, but after the draft, I dug into his tape a little bit. He's talked about it. It's good size, good length. He's a physical player. He's definitely going to fit outside, which is what now Kyler Gordon can kind of go into the nickel slot, which seems like a better fit for him there, and then in the nickel, it's a starter in the NFL. That's how it is. And in the Bears scheme, especially, they count on him to do a lot of stuff, because when they're in their sub packages, they want him to be physical. They want him to control that gap, much like the linebacker does it is replacing. So, this kind of sets up the defense to be the secondary, what they want it to be. And with Stevenson, speed, length, physical, he's going to struggle, as all rookie corners do. It's going to happen. But, we had Greg Gabriel on with us a few shows ago, and he kind of mentioned that the sweet spot for corners in the NFL is the second round. That's where teams really find their guys. Their first round corners is kind of hit and miss because you're not quite sure. But he said for some reason, the second round corners, those guys really come in and they thrive. So getting Stevenson here in the second round, making a nice move up for him. I think a lot of fans thought, they're going to go up and get a center when the trade was announced. And here they are going to get Stevenson, who, again, I wasn't anticipating a corner, but nice pick, sets up that defense nicely here in the back end.
I think corner was kind of that wild card talk about, if the Bears make a big trade down, maybe there's a corner that they like that they can get if they miss out on the top lineman, right? Like there was always that well, it's probably going to be a tackle in the first round, right? It's probably going to be a tackle, but maybe it's defensive lineman. But maybe if something breaks and we get this wild card, it's a corner, right? So like the
Yeah.
corner was never out of the question in my mind for the second cluster of picks, but I wasn't sure exactly what they were going to go. I certainly thought they'd at least spend one on defense, a defensive line. They ended up spending two on the defensive line. I'm not shocked at the corner, but this really shows real investment here by Ryan Poles here. In the first two drafts, he's used 3 second-round picks on his secondary. He inherited Jalen Johnson and Eddie Jackson, two guys that are, I think we both agree are very good starters in this league. And now he has added 3 more. So maybe he didn't know what was going to happen with the Kyler Gordon pick. Kyler looks like he maybe a little bit more comfortable in that nickel position. He drafted another outside corner. It's the guy you're going to start in the outside corner. Now you got 5 guys that you've really that the organization has invested a lot of capital into. I mean, Eddie Jackson has a very big contract. Wouldn't surprise me if Jalen gets extended with some nice money here soon. Maybe he has to show that he can stay healthy another year before he gets that. But you have 5 pretty high value picks or players that are on nice contracts here in your secondary. Poles made this a priority.
Yeah. Yeah, he definitely did. And, he addressed corner again a little later in the draft on day 3. And that's actually, we're going to my tweet here. Talk a little bit about Terrell Smith, cornerback out of Minnesota. And our guy, Jacob, our lead draft analyst, talked about how the Bears add some nice secondary depth with Minnesota corner Terrell Smith. This pick screams Matt Eberflus, great size, length, speed combo with legit developmental upside. Worth the round 5 pick for sure. And I actually pulled up a secondary tweet. I didn't have a chance to put it on the graphic here for the guys watching here on Second City Gridiron, but Pro Football Focus tweeted out, Pro PFF Sam Monsoon, one of their top analysts. He listed Terrell Smith as his favorite pick in the entire 5th round. So there's not just Jacob here touting the value here. PFF, a lot of analysts around the national media thought Smith was a great value here. He kind of struggled a bit early in his Minnesota career, kind of in and out of the lineup, but this last season, he really established himself. He went to the East-West Shrine Game. It kind of tells you, which right now the East-West is a little lesser. It's not the Senior Bowl. Most of the top prospects still go to Senior Bowl. That's kind of slowly seemed to be flipping. But he went to the East-West Shrine Game, and he dominated. He was the best corner on the entire field there. So he really stood out there. And again, much like Stevenson, Smith, good size, good length, good speed, another investment in the secondary. And, corner was a sneaky need for this team because they were trying out Kendall Vildor last year, who bounced back beautifully after what he was used like in the previous scheme. He was a better fit for what they do here with the cover 2-esque scheme. But still, he's not a guy you really want to think, yeah, he's definitely our building block for the future. I like him as a depth piece. I think he'll battle for a starting spot with some of these rookies, but I think eventually Stevenson will take that outside corner spot. Then I think eventually Terrell Smith is going to work his way in the lineup too, and maybe a dime a situation. But Smith's another guy. This is a good value pick for the Bears here, and another talented athlete for that secondary.
Yeah, just the great athletes. I mean, they're scoring very well on these relative athletic scores that we talk about, that if you're following the draft at all, I'm sure that you've come across. But they're also like physical presence, right? Like these guys are willing tacklers. They're willing to come up and lay some wood, right? So that's really kind of showing you what Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus are really emphasizing with their secondary players. I don't know, man. Like it's going to be interesting to see because you no longer have that one guy that's going to get picked on, right? Like that's what we saw last year was that, well, let's just not throw at Jalen Johnson, right? I mean, some quarterbacks eventually did, but there was like a stretch of like, 3-4 games where they just didn't even throw anywhere in his direction. They were just going to pick on the other side of the field. So, again, this is the modern NFL. There are, most teams are coming out with 3 wide receivers all the time. You got to have 3 guys that can cover at a minimum. Bears are looking to try to secure that. Let's see what happens when they get on the field. But I feel pretty good about the secondary. I think that they did what they needed to do there. Let's move on to caught up in a numbers game. And you got a couple stats. I'm going to let you start with the newest Chicago Bears running back.
Okay. Yeah, we're going to talk a little Roschon Johnson, Texas running back. And I found the number. My number is 22.6. And 22.6 is the so on the 2022 Freaks List article, I'm familiar with this article from the Athletics, Bruce Feldman. he does a freaks list where he looks at college athletes and, athletic freaks is what it's basically about. So 22.6 miles per hour on the GPS is what Johnson hit there in 2022, making him one of Texas' fastest players, for last season. Now his you talked about his relative athletic score. He only ran a 4.5840, which that's still pretty damn fast, but it's not like it's not the 4.4s. Everyone went, oh, he's slow because he's not a 4.4. Okay, he's pretty fast, but it's some guys play faster than others. This shows you this 22.6 miles per hour. He has home run speed if he gets out in the secondary. He's a tackle breaker. He has good agility. This is going to be a guy that the Bears already love him. He was talked about throughout a lot of the national analysts. What he brought to the table is leadership. He played all the special teams. He was a high school quarterback. He kind of changed the running back when he got to Texas there. He does whatever the team asks him to do. And if he was at a different school, if he wasn't behind, Bijan Robinson, who was just obviously a stud, he would have been a much, much higher draft pick. But, Bears getting him in the 4th round when they did, I think, again, another great value pick. And, a lot of people think he'll be starting by the time the midseason rolls around.
Yeah, this was an interesting pick because, we talked about running back and there was some talk about, well, are the Bears going to take Texas running back Bijan, right? Like that was kind of the big, maybe Bijan's he's the best player available. Like, why don't you just take the best player available? And there was some weird comparison that brought up the name Michael Haynes draft and all this kind of stuff. Like, I don't know, things got weird. People were kind of breaking down, but this is where you take a running back. You take him in the mid rounds, right? There's too many examples of really talented backs that are mid round picks. And I'm kind of in love with this pick. And I think Bears fans are going to love this guy, right? Everything, people start off like great human being and did everything. There's no diva in this guy, right? Like he played special teams. He was okay. Like, hey, he's the backup to Bijan, this star running back. Who cares? Like he's out there. He'll spell him. He does the dirty work. Willing pass blocker. Big note there, right? Like that he's a guy that if he picks up the pass blocking schemes quick, he's going to find a path to get into a lot of the offense because unless Khalil Herbert does nothing but pass pro in the offseason, he's not good at that. And so you can see how his path to playing time is there. And yeah, you saw a lot of people, oh, he's going to be the starter. He's going to be the starter before you know it. Maybe we'll see, right? But that's exciting. I mean, I'm a Bears fan. I love running backs. So I'm all in on that. Good number. I'm gonna roll with mine. I have the other skill position player that the Bears drafted, Tyler Scott. My number is 45. That is the yards per catch on his average on his 9 touchdowns this last year. So this is a big play threat. His touchdowns went for 76, 75, 61, 41, and then on down from there. Anyway, an average of 45 yards per catch on his 9 touchdowns. So this guy he can take it to the house. He's got some speed. And again, a really nice place to take a 4th round wide receiver like this. A lot of people had him ranked a little higher. How is this guy available at this time? Like this doesn't make any sense. But to me, like this was a really good place to take a speedy wide receiver. He's not the biggest guy, right? He's on the small end of things, but there were some smaller wide receivers that were taken well before this guy. So to me, this was a really good spot for Ryan Poles to add to that wide receiver room. He didn't stop building it, even though you made the big splash with DJ Moore. You have hopefully a healthy Darnell Mooney coming back. You've got Claypool with a full off season, right? You didn't stop building. You brought in another guy, and you brought a speed element here.
Again, receiver. We talk about corners, a sneaky need. So was receiver because the Bears have Chase Claypool, Darnell Mooney. They're both in their contract year. Equanimeous St. Brown came back on a 1-year deal, so he's in his contract year. So you got to have some receivers. I mean, you got to trot out, teams are 3 receiver sets all the time. So you need 3 top quality guys, which means you need a couple guys that you trust to kind of rotate through. So the Bears have that now. They got a few guys, Scott, as a rookie receiver, you mentioned he's a little smaller. I heard him compared to Darnell Mooney coming out. Scott is a a bit more of a home run threat because that's what he did a lot at Cincinnati. Nice pick here. Speed. The Bears now have a lot of speed guys at receiver. They kind of throw them at waves. Scott did a lot of stuff with the ball in his hands. He's great after the catch. He was a high school running back. The jet sweeps, the ends arounds. Who knows what they're going to do. Now you got Velus Jones Jr., last year's receiver. He's now in the mix, and he's this is kind of nice. Ryan Poles. He's not saying, hey, we can't take Scott because we took Velus last year. He's like, no, this Scott's on my board. I'm taking him where I taken him because I think he can help my football team. Velus Jones now, what does he bring to the table? He's still going to be a guy in special teams. He can do it. In hindsight, now you look at that. Well, that wasn't the best value getting him where they got him, but that's a sunk cost, man. Who cares what he was last year? Who cares where he was picked last year? How does he fit in this year? Maybe he's your fifth guy. Maybe he's your gadget guy. Maybe he does do some more of the stuff in the backfield stuff. I don't care. It's another speed element to the team. You have more weapons for Justin Fields now to play with, and I think that's what matters here.
Yeah, yards after catch, that's a big deal. Like you said, he was a former running back, so he knows what to do when he does get the ball in his hands. Even if he is a smaller guy, he can make guys miss in the open field. So big play threat there. And I will say that is the pick that they acquired from Carolina, right? Or no, that was an acquired fourth round pick. I can't remember exactly where that came from. That might have been the Robert Quinn pick.
Oh yeah, the fourth round. Another great move by Ryan Poles. Taking the Eagles to the woodshed again and getting something for Robert Quinn.
Oh, that was getting something for nothing.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's take a quick break here. On the other side of this break, we will talk about everybody's favorite segment, the Three Bears.
Nice. Are we going to do the Fields report too? Do you think, or?
Yeah, why not?
Awesome.
All right, Lester, we're back. So let's talk about the Three Bears. So hot bowl of porridge, cold bowl of porridge, and just right. So my hot bowl of porridge goes to the Kennesaw State Owls. Nice. They got their first player drafted in one Mr. Travis Bell, a stout defensive tackle. Poles kept adding to the defensive line. This guy's like my height, like 300 pounds, can run a lot faster than I ever could. They added an athlete from Kennesaw State, their first ever drafted player. Congratulations to the Owls.
Ryan Poles loves this guy. He said that when he had him in for his meeting, he didn't want him to leave. They just connected on a personal level. That's good. I mean, you got to have that kind of stuff. This is a theme throughout the entire draft class and through Ryan Poles' tenure, the character matters, so here's another hardworking kid. He just loves what he does on the football field. Another pretty good athlete. Obviously wasn't at the combine because it's such a small school, but his pro day numbers looked really good. He kind of reminded me a little bit of Anthony Adams. Short, stout, good against the run, pretty good athlete. He got a pretty good first step. 7th round pick. He may not make the roster. He may kind of have to sneak through back to the practice squad, but again, throwing bodies at the line. And I heard a lot of people say, well, why would they take him when they already have Billings, who they signed in free agencies? It's a free agency. These guys aren't on the roster forever. You got to keep restocking. You need more bodies, more beef up front. Another guy that's good against the run, good size. I like the pick. I didn't know anything about him heading into the draft, but go back through, watch some of the stuff you can find on him, read the interviews about him. Nice young man. It's a good pick for the Bears here.
Yeah, I did the 7th round draft pick instant reactions with Jacob and Jacob, very tired Jacob Infante, and I said, so how much Kennesaw State tape did you watch? And he goes, well, I can't say that I know much about this guy, but I pulled up an interview with him. He talked about how body type wise and guy that he wants to kind of style himself after is Grady Jarrett, very good player in the NFL. Obviously Grady Jarrett, a little bit higher pedigree, but that's really nice to be able to put yourself up on that, and say, hey, this is what I'm working towards. I see myself in this player. I can get there, but certainly athletic guy to be able to move that well at that height, weight, really shows that he has something there. Small school guy, again, plenty of guys that have had success once they make that transition and, maybe give him a year on the practice squad, like you say, and then maybe he's a natural replacement for a guy like Billings, who, spends his 1 year here and then moves on, and then he moves into that sort of secondary rotational piece role. That's why you use those players, right?
Yeah.
7th round draft picks are for projects. They're for special teams players. They're for guys that, you're not expecting anything from them this year necessarily, unless it's just special teams, right? The players this late are not expected to participate in games unless you are in a lot of trouble. Or they're a kicker. You're taking a kicker in the 7th round, or a punter or something like that. So, I agree. Nice there. Do you have any other hot bulls you want to hand out?
I do not. I'm going to kind of let you kind of gauge the hot cold just right this one. I'll kind of follow your lead here.
All right, cold bowl of porridge. I'm giving this to some of the Chicago writers and commentators on Peter Skoronski. What is it with this guy?
Northwestern, man. Come on.
Yeah,
Local
okay. He went to
kiddish.
Northwestern.
Yeah.
Who cares? Right? Like he's a Packer fan. Isn't this the story? His grandpa's like in the Packers Hall of Fame. He's in the championship teams on the Packers in the 60s. He's a Packers fan. But the amount of virtual ink that was spilled on this guy, who polls told you that he follows thresholds, and that this guy was not going to be a tackle in his system. And do you want to spend that type of premium pick on a guard? Poles doesn't need a guard right now as much as he needed Darnell Wright and to take a center. But the amount of virtual ink and just going to bat for this guy, and for what, I don't understand. Like, I don't get it. I don't understand why some writers went out of their way to try to paint this like some sort of failure on Ryan Poles' part to not bring in Skoronski. I hope he goes on to have a Hall of Fame career.
Yeah.
I wish him all the best. But Poles told you through his actions and through his words what he values at the tackle position and what he values in terms of draft, where he goes with premium picks and all that kind of stuff. He wasn't going to take a guy that he saw as an interior offensive lineman with a pick that high. Plain and simple. Move on. End of story. So Cold Bowl goes to those gentlemen.
I understand the national writers that kept mocking him to the Bears. I get it. They're not as dialed into the team, but some of the local guys, they really were harping the Skoronski thing to the Chicago. And I just never saw it because, like you said, Poles talks about these thresholds, how you want a arm length, a certain 34 inches is the magic number there. And, Darnell Wright's, I think, a 1/4 inch low, which you'll make do if you got good feet. Skoronski was, 32. I'm not sure his exact numbers here, but I would love to see Skoronski get a chance to play left tackle because I think his college tape is outstanding. But a lot of NFL teams, they just don't care. They just don't care about that. They look at him and say, "Hey, look, you have short arms. You're a guard, no matter what it is." Cody Whitehair was a left tackle in college, outstanding left tackle in college. Bears drafted him in the 2nd round back in the day, kicked him right inside. It's just that era, same thing. They have thresholds. If you don't meet them, you can't play this spot.
Zach Martin, same story.
Another guy,
at Notre Dame, right? Notre Dame, and they kick him in, and he's going to the Hall of Fame. So
he is,
it's not, and maybe you can make the argument. You know what? You take the best. He's the best offensive lineman on the board. You want to make your offensive line better. You figure out the tackle later. You take him, and you okay. Well, what are you going to do with Nate Davis? What are you going to do with Tevin Jenkins? Right? Like you're gonna push somebody off now.
Yeah.
And so that's the idea. Like when people say, "Oh, just take the best player available." Best player available at a position of need with your filters of what's important, and your scheme has to influence, and the character has to influence. There's all these things. It is not just best player available. That is not what this is. It's not Madden. There's a lot of real world things that have to collide here.
Well, it kind of goes, and it goes how each team has their own board. Each team stacks their board based on, these thresholds and the fit, and he may be the best football player, general speaking, best football player on the general board. But as far as the Bears, they may have knocked him down a little bit because, like you said, they don't need a guard. He wasn't a guy they needed. Wright was, they've talked about it. Wright was the top O lineman on their board. And part of it is right tackle. That's what they wanted. They trust Braxton Jones. They want to see him grow at that left tackle spot. So right tackle kind of got a little bit of a bump. I'm sure they have Paris Johnson up there as well because he's the guy that kind of float between, and another guy that's going to be a really good professional football player. But this is why. You stack your board based on what's best for the team. And Skronsky, good luck he's Tennessee, right? So they may play him at tackle. Who knows?
Yeah, well, Tennessee needs all the positions.
They need all of
Their
them.
offensive line is terrible. So good luck. Though. I mean, you need 5. So
Yeah.
he's 1. Good for them. All right, let's talk about the just right bullet board. So for me, I liked Poles' approach in the final rounds. I thought it made a lot of sense. We talk about the linebacker Sewell, who's taken in the 5th round, their other 5th round choice. I like taking the chance there. People didn't like his tape from this year. Coming into this year, he was thought of as a 1st round draft pick.
Yeah.
Like, people really liked him. He's an Oregon guy, so plenty of big games and spotlight. Didn't have a very good year, and so you say, okay, well, maybe this year something was going on, or something was a fluke, or they weren't using him in the right way, whatever. We'll go back to that older tape and we'll trust our eyes on that and say, we can get that out of him. Right. So again, 5th round pick, you need another linebacker. Again, there's holes all over the place, but you need another linebacker. You did a nice job of going out and getting big time veteran names, right? Like, you solidified that in that way. You got Jack Sanborn to be in the mix there, but you need to keep adding bodies here. And this is a guy that can contribute on special teams, and he has the athletic upside to be able to step in and play in a pinch early, you hope, or develop into something down the line.
Yeah, I like the Sewell pick a lot. I mean, you talk about his tape, his last season's tape, not the best. From what I understand, the Oregon Ducks changed schemes. They went to a different scheme, which didn't fit his skill set the best. And also I heard that there may have been an injury that kind of caused him to kind of play a little slower, maybe gain a little weight as well there. So, I think, with the Bears, he's going to drop some weight. He's going to play a little faster. He's in a scheme now, the 4-man front, where now he'll probably be your Sam, possibly back up a little bit at the Mike. I think Sewell's in the mix. I know a lot of Bears fans want Jack Sanborn, local kid, great story, undrafted free agent. We all love those try-hard guys. Him and Sewell may battle for that starting Sam spot, because Sewell has the pedigree. You talk about his tape from a couple years ago. We talk about the athlete, another 5-star athlete coming out of high school.
Yeah.
Outstanding football player.
Yeah. And I'm up for the time that he's going to beat his brother for a sack. Yeah. I'm in on that, right? Like, I'll put money down right now that's going to be fun. And we'll just round out the draft class and talk about the penultimate pick in the draft.
I like that word. I love that word.
It's a great word, right? Yeah. And it's not used. Why aren't we talking about penultimate pick? We talk about Mr. Irrelevant, the last pick of the draft. I want to talk about the penultimate pick, and that is Kendall Williamson, who was picked with pick number 258 in this draft. And again, you add to the secondary. He's got elite athletic traits. You're able to make him basically a priority free agent, right? Like, you're able to say, I don't have to fight with the other 31 teams for your services. We're going to make you a draft pick. You're going to come in. We're going to add some speed and athleticism to the back end here. And if you can make the squad participate, you're going to be on teams, right? That's exactly how you use 7th round picks. Exactly.
Yep. Safety's another one of those needs. It's all needs. The Bears roster last year, it's a 3-win team. It's bad. They did not bring back Dane Cruikshank, who was injured most year anyway. They did not bring back DeAndre Houston Carson. So you need a safety. I mean, you have last year's pick out of Cal. Elijah Hicks will kind of be in the mix for a special teams role and a backup role. There's another guy in Williamson who played special teams at Stanford, besides being a starting strong safety there. So Williamson kind of brings that element to the game as well. Ryan Poles talked about him in his presser. He will play special teams. He's a guy they're counting on to kind of be in the mix there. So now you have 2 guys back-to-back, 2 years back-to-back in the 7th round to kind of safety backups kind of play that special teams role. So that's what you need. That's how he'll make the roster. If he does make it as a 7th rounder, he'll make it as a special teamer, and we'll see what happens from there.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we like to do the Fields report, and we know that this is not necessarily that relevant because Fields did not do anything over the draft. But I want to ask you, did this offseason get you in a place where you feel confident that the Chicago Bears are going to be able to properly evaluate Justin Fields this year with what they have put in front of him and around him?
Yeah, I think the evaluating really took place last year. I think they really trust him. They like him. I mean, he's the Chase Claypool trade told us all we had to know. This franchise believes in Justin Fields. They spent the what ended up being the 32nd pick in the draft for Chase Claypool. Yeah, it stings a little bit, but hey, you know what? I think Chase Claypool is a good football player. I think he'll have a better year this year than what we saw last year. Last year was just rough. Came in the middle, had to learn the scheme on the fly. There was a couple of injuries he kind of fought through. We did not see the best of Claypool last season. We'll see him kind of more now. He fits a role better with DJ Moore as your clear number one. Chase Claypool now is going to kind of fit that place there. Again, great athlete. Go up and get it. 6'4", big physical, strong guy. Some of those jet sweeps. Justin Fields got to be happy with this draft. He's got a new starting right tackle who's known for his pass blocking. Going back to the free agency, he's got now another guard up front who's going to help solidify the middle. He's got a center now that I'm sure he trusts a little more than what he had, in previous. What's going on there? So Cody Whitehair, a veteran. So Justin Fields has to be happy, man. DJ Moore, Claypool, a revamped O-line, Robert Tonyan coming in, a nice pass catching tight end, so this offense has been revamped. The whole backfield, David Montgomery, it hurts to see him go as Bears fans because he was such a popular player. But man, the backfield has been revamped. Justin Fields, man, he has to be living large now because he knows that this team really is committed to him. They're investing in him, and it's all there for him. He's going to have a nice season.
Yeah, I think that I know fans really like David Montgomery. I think they're going to really, really, really like this Roschon Johnson. Everything's there. I really like Khalil Herbert. Like, I really like him, watching him run the ball. But he is a flawed running back. That is not a complete back. And so you hope that a guy like Johnson can come in and be a more complete back. And just seems like he's just going to add to that. And I know we mentioned a few times, you made an aside too, but we're trying to figure out what's the profile for Ryan Poles. What is it he's looking for? What is it he's building? What are the essential elements of a player? And I think we kind of found it, right? Like, I think we can start to say Ryan Poles likes athletes, which of course they all like athletes, but some people, I don't care what he looks like in testing or any of that stuff. He clearly Poles sticks to some of these thresholds that he has learned through other people that he's worked under. And then inside of that, are they explosive athletes? What are the tells at that position, right? So we heard a lot about, defensive tackles and how much broad jump's important, right? So now you look back and you're like, oh, geez, both these guys, actually all three of these defensive tackles were really great testers in the broad jump, right? And so you say, okay, like again, you're reverse engineering things, but you say, okay, we kind of thought that might be a thing. So now we have a little bit more evidence, and now we'll use that in terms of our modeling, if you will, moving forward. So next year's draft, now we have a couple rounds of this under our belt, and we can say, okay, here's what he likes. And here's the pool of players that are available at this position that we think is a position of need that may be available at this spot. This might be a real target, right? So we can now start to make some more educated guesses about where Ryan Poles might go in the draft. And if we can do that, a lot of other people can do that too. But it just makes it more fun for us if we can kind of say, this is we get into another Jalen Carter situation.
Yeah.
You know what? We have pretty hard evidence that he's willing to pass on a guy with that level of talent because he has issues with the character. Now, we can't know for sure because we're not in those meetings or anything like that. But, we're starting to get a picture. And I think that I like the picture. I think that I like taking athletes. I like positional value. There's some analytics here. That play. It's not total analytics, but there's some analytics. Plus, there's some old school football stuff that should get people pumped up. Team captains, guys that are just glowing reviews from their coaches about how much they love the game, stuff like that. That's old school football stuff. And you combine those things, and you start getting enough guys, and all of a sudden the locker room tips over into having explosive athletes that are really great human beings that just love football, just live and breathe this stuff. All of a sudden now you've got the elements of what can come together as a really interesting team. So I really like where this is going, and overall I really enjoyed the draft class and learning about them, and think that this is going in the right direction.
It's going to be cool. So eventually we get to a point where in the draft's happening, we look at a guy, oh yeah, that's a Ryan Poles guy. That's a Bear guy. You know, you just get the feeling for these. There are some teams like the Eagles, the Ravens, the Patriots, the more successful organizations, they have those. You know, we understand the prototype with the guy they're looking for. You know, the Bears have not been relevant for a while. They have not been a very good team in a long time. They haven't had a regime that's kind of been in place that you trust in a long time. So getting to the point where, oh yeah, that's a Poles guy, that's kind of cool. And then you talk about the character thing, and you know, Poles did his due diligence on Jalen Carter. You know, he brought him in. You know, maybe it's one of those things where he just felt at this time with his locker room just not quite ready. Maybe in another year or two, he'll say, you know what, I got enough. I have top leaders in place. I mean, there's no Olin Kreutz type leadership, you know, on this roster. There is no Brian Urlacher on this roster, kind of, you know, really that locker room presence where, you know, they can have a guy come in and you know, they'll get those guys. Justin Fields, I think, is close. I think Justin Fields kind of has that alpha mentality where guys, they look up to him. They don't want to let him down. They're doing things because, okay, I got to do it this way because Justin Fields is my guy. You know, he'll get there, I think, eventually. He may get there this year. And then at that point, now you can kind of take some of those risks, I guess, so to say. And, you know, I'm going to take a guy that may not be the best character, but you know what? There's something there. His upbringing is great. He's got great parents, whatever it may be. He just made a stupid mistake at this point. So let's take a chance on him. I believe that our locker room's ready for a guy like that. This year, they weren't ready for that. It just so happened Darnell Wright was the perfect fit at the time. So I'm sure Ryan Poles like, you know what, let's just go with the guy, you know, and it's a good move. And like you said, I'm with you. I think it's an exciting draft class, 10 guys, the undrafted free agents and the rookies that they just had the mini camp. They made a few roster moves. So, you know, they'll shuffle the roster here for the next few weeks. And then I think there's going to be another camp coming up here, I think in 2 weeks. So we'll have some nice football stuff coming out of House Hall here leading up for the next month or two.
Yeah, we should live stream the schedule release. That's a joke. Schedule release coming out here this week. So that's
when is it? Wednesday? Is it coming out here?
Thursday maybe. Soon. Wednesday, Thursday.
It always leaks through Twitter so quick.
Yeah, I mean,
they make a big deal out of it. Oh, tune in NFL Network of live schedule release. I got it already.
Everything has to be an event for the NFL. Yeah. So and they do it, and they do it well.
Marketing, yeah.
So. Yeah, it's just print. It's a printing press. They just print money. That's all they do. So, all right. Well, we will get out of here with the podcast. We will stick around on Second City Gridiron YouTube to talk a little bit more with the people that are live streaming with us. But until next time, bear down.
You know, I had that Ryan Poles fleeced Roseman line in a couple articles. No one really called me out on it in the comment section. I was kind of waiting for someone to say, "How dare you?"
They'll believe you.
Maybe, you know. I mean, it's funny if you look at the numbers for that trade. Josh did the Jimmy Johnson chart. He does those breakdown trade charts for us. It's a fair trade. I mean, the Bears, you know, didn't lose out. They didn't really gain out. It kind of worked depending on which trade chart you looked at. It the numbers match, but the fact that he got the trade when he had zero intention on taking Jalen Carter. You know, I just thought it was a brilliant move. And he even talked about it at the press conference how there was another deal in place that he could have made, but he would have went back too far, and he was afraid he would not get a chance to get Darnell Wright because Darnell Wright was their top offensive tackle.
I think that's exactly what happened. Was that there was another deal, and he just needed something. He just didn't want to stick at 9, you know, because he knew that there was some value. So he takes the 4th rounder next year. That's not the most valuable pick in the world. You know, I get it.
Anything can happen. What if the Eagles have an injury at quarterback?
Right. Yeah, you never know. You never know. But it's probably going to be a late 4th rounder. Who cares? Like you know, fine. By the time next year comes around, it's going to be like, oh yeah, we got that extra 4th rounder. That's nice. You know, I mean, like you're going to like it. And it's just like these picks, it's you have to keep accumulating. And we didn't mention it, but he made the point in the Poles made a point in the press conference that he used the pick in this year's draft to trade up for Stevenson, right? So that was a move early, and then he moved down in the 4th to get a pick back. Now, obviously, like you lost value in that pick. You know, they're not the same, but he wanted 10 players from the draft. And so he knew that he needed to be able to make a move to move down. So he used that first pick in the 4th round, which is the first pick on day 3. And so everybody, they reevaluate their boards. I'm like, oh God, I got to come up and get this guy. So he makes that move, still gets the running back that he was probably going to take at that pick anyway, right? Like, and there you go. And so he gets that player back and is able to make another nice selection. So he had in his mind, like, I want to come out of this draft with 10 players. So I can maybe make a move up, but I got to make a move back later. That's smart. Like that's just smart. I like that type of thinking. I know a lot of Bears fans are down on Chris Ballard. Chris Ballard had a really good draft.
He had a nice draft.
Looks like it all fell to him, but Ballard and Poles work together. And a lot of Bears fans wanted Ballard to be the Bears GM when Ryan Pace got hired. And so I think a lot of people sort of were out on Ballard because so many Bears fans were in on Ballard and out on Pace early. So there's this like remnant of bad Ballardness or whatever.
Yeah.
Now he's been too cautious with the quarterback market and all that. I mean, I'm not going to defend that, but overall, I really like how he builds teams. Like he kind of lets it come to him, and maybe could be a little more aggressive at times. But overall, like you can't be too aggressive too often. It's going to burn you. You're going to burn through stuff like Pace did. And so
if Ballard and Poles come from the same coaching or same scouting tree.
This is what I'm saying. So if Poles is going to be pretty similar to Ballard, I think I'm going to be happy because I just hated Ryan Pace. I mean, this. Like even when people were like, "Oh, I really like," I'm like, "Man, this guy does so little that I like."
I was in on Pace longer than you, but I quickly like, what is he doing? You didn't understand the value as much as I thought he should have.
Jeremy asks what your favorite draft pick was. We didn't talk about favorites. We kind of talked about them all, but what was your favorite?
We did a Windy City Grand roundtable where we all kind of had a chance to pick our favorite. I think 8 or 9 of us contributed in that, and mine's still the same. Darnell Wright, offensive line guy. I love O-line play. I watched this film. I didn't know a lot about him early in the process, and then Quentin, I talked about earlier, he kind of had a spotlight of him. I looked at him a little more, and I'm like, wow, this guy's pretty good. His pass pro is what did it for me. He's very, very good feet for his size. He has good balance, and then he has grip strength. When you look at his hand size, they're not the biggest, but he reminded me a little bit of, I always used to talk about Bobby Massey back in the day, how if he got his hands on you, you were blocked. He wasn't the athlete Darnell Wright is, so he couldn't always get his hands on everybody. Darnell Wright can get there, he can mirror, and then once he gets his hands locked on, it's pretty much there. That's why I'm confident his run game, which I said is inconsistent, that will improve because his feet's there, his strength's there, his power's there. He has good drive. He has to put it together now, and I think that's going to come. So Wright's my fave. How about you? What's your fave pick here?
I mean, I like a lot of the players. Like that's hard. I'm kind of every year. Like it's very rare for me to be upset about a draft pick. I mean, it happened. I was very anti Cedric Benson, but like
everybody was anti Cedric Benson.
I guess. Whatever. We won't go down that road. But the Texas running back, right? Roschon Johnson. Like I believe that was my answer, and it was more because I just think that this is going to be a guy that Bears fans love.
Yeah.
And when you let a guy like Dave Montgomery, who was a fan favorite, people really like Dave Montgomery. They like watching him run. And if you care about analytics and efficiency stats and all that kind of stuff, he actually wasn't very good. He wasn't that efficient at running the football. And like Herbert was just much better in terms of just a pure runner. But like you don't always see, you can see the effort. You can see, just how he would churn his legs and all that kind of stuff. And I get it. Like and you need players that you can cheer for like that. And generally that comes in the form of a guy that touches the ball a lot, right? Like so you're going to have those guys. But Johnson, to me, just everything I'm reading is just, oh my God, okay, this is just going to be, everybody's going to love this guy. He's going to be a favorite. And so I just thought it was really cool. I thought it really embodied what Poles was doing. Positional value, you wait to the 4th round to draft a running back. You knew you wanted to add to the room, but you waited until an appropriate round. You got a guy who has very little tread taken off the tires, right? Like, right? Like
Yeah.
he didn't have a lot of carries because he was the backup, and then everybody's like, he'd be the starter anywhere else in the country. That's how good he is. The Texans had the top, top two backs. The Bears got to steal, and so even if that's not true, even if he's not the second best back in the draft, you know that he hasn't been overused. He's not going to come in and have tired legs from carrying the ball 500 times in college, and so I don't know. I think there's something to like the approach there that I liked. The fact that he's a good character it seemed to me like you need that. It's like fan service, right? Like there's a little bit of like getting guys that fans can really rally behind, and I think there's something to that.
Did you catch the story that special teams coach Hightower talked about Johnson? So they had the special teams meeting. He's obviously in that because he's a rookie, and when the meeting ended, he stuck around and he cleaned up the room, picked up some empty water bottles some of his teammates left behind. And Coach Hightower just talked about just goes to his character. He wants things a certain way, and that's what he expects. And so when the meeting was over, he kind of went around and did that. And all the coaches have talked about him glowingly so far. Everyone that's had anything to say about him has been very positive. So it's it's exciting because he is a back that can do it all. He is good, like you said, good in pass pro, good out of the backfield. So Khalil Herbert's in his contract year. Foreman had a 1-year deal. Travis Homer, I think, had a 2-year deal, but he's more of a special teams guy. So, Johnson may be your long-term here at your long-term number one running back here once he takes that job for at least 4 years.
It's pretty cool. We got a question about, do we think Poles is going to wait to see if a Khalil Mack type player might shake loose before the season starts?
That would be
Chase
great.
Sure. Like they got all the money still. Like they have the most cap money. They have positions that they can certainly add to and upgrade. Yeah, I mean that's the hope is that you still control the board, right? Like that's the idea. You still have the top waiver. A guy like Mac would be a vested veteran, so he would just go out into the free agent market. I don't think Mac's coming back, but maybe. I kind of doubt it though. Generally, you don't go back to the team that traded you. And the guy that traded you, right? Like that's generally doesn't happen. But sometimes money talks. So yeah, I think that they're looking for that. Like they're again, they still control the board. They didn't spend all of their money. And they're still in a good position for next year too. They can roll that over, and they can, they're going to give some extensions out here soon. Like that they got to spend a little bit more money. Like they have to hit a floor, and so I assume that they're going to give some money out here in extensions. But they still control the board. I think I've said that 6 times. So yeah, I do think that you can't count on that because you don't know who's going to come through. But I could absolutely a defensive lineman, particularly an edge player. Absolutely. When somebody like that comes free, they should snap them up.
Well, there's like 3 or 4 edges on the market now that are kind of waiting for jobs. I'm terrible with names, but Yannick Ngakwe's there,
They might be waiting for a guy like Lawson for the Jets to maybe cut him to, because they may need to make some moves with cap stuff. Maybe the Vikings cut Zadarius Smith, right? Like there's maybe some talk. There was some talk that Zadarius Smith was on the block and Dalvin Cook was on the block, and they didn't make any trades during the draft. So maybe they
had a weird draft. The Vikings,
they were a non-factor.
We talk about the relative athletic score. They had the worst RAS draft class of all of them here. So what's your thoughts on Chase Young with the question here? Do you think Chase Young with Watson's I don't think they're going to cut him.
Going to cut him.
But he may be a guy that may be in play because they're not going to want to pay him. I think if he comes back and has a strong start to the season, we talk about Ryan Poles having, a lot of the money here. They also got some draft capital. Maybe they swing a deal for Young. He's still young, but coming off an ACL, it was an ACL, correct? Was it with a knee or was it dislocation? It was something with his knee. It was pretty serious, but he came back and, he's got to prove he's the guy before anyone decides to pay him or shell out anything for him.
Yeah, I've definitely been injured lately. So, is that a priority for Poles to avoid that? I don't know. Like I can't judge that yet. Right. Like, you're going to put a bunch of money down on a guy that hasn't been able to stay healthy. I don't know. Like that's not necessarily that, but he's clearly got all the talent in the world. He shakes free because they put too much money on that defensive line. next year, then you go after him. I don't think that they're going to make a trade for him this year, right? Like, I don't think there's a trade and extend in place for 2023. I think Washington's going to play with what they have, and then they'll probably let him go next year. I could be wrong. Chris says, "Can we mute the name Skoronski?" Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to bring it up because I just do not understand what all this stuff is happening. It just seems so weird, and I know that Chris hates Ballard. I think it's hilarious, and this if is doing a lot of work in your statement, Chris. Like that is carrying so much weight here. It was a dumb move to trade up from 3 to 2. That was so dumb, and it cost so much, and it didn't make any sense. And his whole process was BS. Like the whole thing with Watson, which I get, he's a milkshake duck and turns out to be this terrible human being. He looked like a really good football player at first, right? That was the obvious. Watson was the obvious pick there, and then of course you have the Mahomes thing. But if you take the guy from North Carolina who couldn't beat out a guy that I don't even know if he ever played in like Canadian Football League as a professional, couldn't win the starting job at North Carolina until he was a senior, and then showed no ability to complete deep balls with any consistency. Yeah, I never understood the Trubisky pick. I never got it. Never understood the trade up. Never really bought into Mitch, but sure, if Mitch is the guy, then he's sure. Okay, yeah, that is a big if though. Like if is doing a lot of work there. Sorry, Chris, I'm highlighting all your stuff here. With Davis next to Wright, where we're all running back ship, you got to help the rookie, right? I don't know. I think I mean if he can prove that he's able to handle it himself, I would assume that you'd still be swinging the protection to Jones until he proves that he can handle things on his own. So if you watch, I broke down Braxton a couple times last year, and my assessment was that they asked him to do very little. Like they rolled the pocket away from him a lot. They got the ball out quick when he was asked to do things one-on-one. Like they were not asking him to do true one-on-one pass sets. Like they helped him out a lot, or they asked him to do the easiest job in that protection scheme. And so they protected him. That's the point. They protected him. I don't know that you have to do that with the number 10 overall pick. And a guy that's shown that he can take on premium defensive rushing talent in college. You think that hopefully will translate in the NFL. So I'm not sure. I think I don't know. What do you think?
Last year we saw a lot of teams who they did a lot of stunts against the Bears. They would do a ton of stunts. Part of that was because there was some issues with Braxton. There were some issues. There was issues all over the place. They had problems all up and down that line. So having things now pretty solid, how they have a nice starting five, it should be. I think they'll have a better sense of where they got to help. I think they're going to leave, some tight ends in on occasion. On both sides. I think they can kind of slide protection one way or the other. A lot of it is dictated what the defense does. What does the front look like? That's kind of how you can have intention. Okay, we got to help out. Let's say it's Jones. Let's say Jones has a tough matchup. You can kind of line up and say our intention is to help Jones here on this play. But if the defense is lined up in a certain way, you have to slide protections the other direction. Sometimes that happens. That's why, hey, he's a pro. He's got to make that block. Now it's up to Justin Fields now to say, hey, our pass pro was set this way. Pre-snap, we're coming up to the line. We had to adjust something. Now it's on the quarterback to realize, okay, I got to get the ball out a little quicker here because where I was having help on Braxton Jones, now we had to have help come over here. It looks like this guy's coming off the edge. He's going to be free. He has to know to get rid of the ball. Hopefully we see some more of those slants that we haven't seen. The slant was such a huge part of the Packers offense, and Luke Getsy was there for a long time, and we just didn't see a lot of it last year. I think he thinks he may now have some of the more players. He's more comfortable doing that. I think you may see a little more of that. We may see Justin Fields now take more ownership of the offense. He's now in year 2 of the scheme. Everything's pointing up, man. I mean, it's exciting time. I mean, you already hear Getsy talk about where Fields is now compared to last year. He's like miles ahead of where he was. His understanding of the scheme, understanding of the offense, knowing where the guys have to line up. I think we're going to see that. I think the sack numbers are going to take a dip because of Darnell Wright, but also because of Justin Fields' his knowledge of this offense.
We don't want to talk about Rodgers too much, right? But talk about Aaron Rodgers a little bit. And one of the things that he said in an interview where he wasn't being a total whatever he normally is, he says, in the offseason is a really great opportunity to like really focus and work on one or two things. And then that next year, you kind of master those. And every year, like your quarterback, you got a long career, like you can really master a lot of things. And one thing that I noticed pretty regularly is that Getsy would call quick game out of the shotgun. And what that meant was Fields would take a shotgun snap and he'd basically have this like one step and fire. And a lot of those balls weren't very good balls. And to me, it was because he couldn't find the laces and he wasn't throwing the ball well if he couldn't find the laces. Now, he had all the time in the world to throw the ball at Ohio State. You can get a cup of tea, you can read War and Peace, right? Like you have all the time in the world when you have really great offensive linemen. And so he probably wasn't asked to take a snap from the gun where you don't get the laces. If you take a snap under center and you're asked to throw quick game, you get the laces immediately because the center can direct the laces up to your right hand and you have the laces as you leave the center, right? So if you're under center, you can have the laces right away. But there's some randomness when it comes back as a snap from the shotgun. And so you can't find the laces. And if Fields doesn't know how to throw the ball, and it sounds crazy, but if you're just throwing the ball all the time, you're going to find the laces so that you get the best spiral. And so if you don't know how to, and there was a couple times where you could tell he was spinning it and it made his timing just a little bit off because he wanted the laces. So if he's spending this offseason to try to learn how to throw the ball under imperfect conditions, meaning the ball's a little wet, meaning that he maybe just find a ball with no laces or whatever, just like get it and throw. And maybe he can learn how that ball feels on his hand so that he can get accurate passes when it's in imperfect conditions. Those are the kinds of things that I'm excited about because that you can, like, there's documented history that you can make progress. Quarterbacks can make progress by focusing on things like that. And Getsy can be a little smarter about how he's calling plays because if I can pick something like that up, he should be able to pick that up, and he should be able to incorporate that into his play calling.
Yeah, it's exciting time for Getsy too. He's going to grow as a play caller. I mean, I don't think he wants to be quite as run heavy as the Bears were last year. And I know the numbers show that they were really, really, really run heavy, but a lot of those runs were field scrambles. I don't know the exact numbers, off the top of my head, but I did an article, at some point, right towards the end of the season where I kind of looked at the scrambles and then the design runs from Fields. He had way more scrambles than design runs. So, that'll kind of come back a little bit. Some of those 50 some odd sacks he took will actually be, completed now or passed. So, he doesn't want to be run heavy. I mean, no team in the NFL is run heavy anymore. That's just how the league has kind of shifted. It's good to kind of buck the trend and do your own thing. And I think the Bears kind of want to be part of that, but it's going to be an exciting offense, kind of see how all these pieces blend in. Mooney should be back and healthy by the time camp rolls around. He kind of still working his way back from his injury, but he'll be there. The backfield is going to be by committee, it seems, at least from start, but some talented runners. We didn't even talk about Dante Foreman, who is his last season in the second half of the season was outstanding running the ball. He says he's good out of the backfield. No one in the NFL has used him that way so far, but he says he can catch out of the backfield. He's a pretty good pass blocker. We'll kind of see how that works there. But then Herbert knows his limitations. He knows that he's not a good in blitz pickup. He knows he's not catching the ball. So kind of how Justin Fields has that one thing he's working on, I'm sure Khalil Herbert's working on his pass pro in the offseason because he knows that keeps him in the league. He's in a contract year. So a lot of guys, a lot of hungry Bears players are going to try to look to show out this year, and it's going to be beneficial. And there's no reason why the Bears. I know it's early. There's no reason why the Bears in the weak NFC can't be at least in the hunt graphics for us as fans.
I think the expectation is to be around the 500 mark, and you hope that they're competing for the 6-7.
That's playoffs in the NFC 500.
Yep. I mean, honestly, I think that's. So. I wouldn't sell this team any shorter than that. I don't know why you would. Like there's enough, again, documented history of teams in that trajectory. Like that, to me, that's where the expectation should be. Real quick, can the undrafted free agent market provide starting edge rusher? No, that's not a thing. Like definitely
not a starter.
Not if you can't find starting edge reps because those guys get pushed up the board big time. So anybody that
They did
could,
sign
they should draft.
I forget his first name, but it was Sean Harris, former Bear. His son played for the Arizona Wildcats,
Oh,
and he is a UDFA this year off the edge. And I know today the Bears, and it's not official yet, but they did sign another defensive lineman who played a lot of edge at Houston. His name escapes me, but they just signed him today. I think his size, he's like 6'270". He may kick inside of the interior, but you never know. I mean, that's, we see it all around the league. Teams, undrafted free agents kind of come out of nowhere. Maybe you find a guy, but right now they don't have a lot of speed off that edge is what they're lacking.
that would be a shocker to be able to get
Yeah.
starting snaps. I mean, you're in trouble more than anything.
I think Dominic Robinson, there's some upside there. Last year's 5th round pick,
Yeah.
Looked great early, just kind of was disappeared the rest of the season. But we talk about speed off the edge. He has speed off the edge. He has now a full year under his belt. He has an off season in an NFL weight room and NFL training staff. I think he's a guy that may, provide something for you there. I think the Bears are high on him because he was a former receiver in college. He kind of late to the defensive end position in college. So, there's some upside there. And it's, again, a lot of young guys on this roster. Now we're going to see even last year's draft picks. Let's see how they develop. Let's see how Coach Flus kind of get these guys going through the program here, where they're going to be now in second year.
And then Chris, we'll end on this one because it's an offensive line question. And this is
I
probably
knew you were going to go to that.
Well, it's probably a Jacob question because it's already into the next year's draft class.
Yeah.
But asks if you don't see much improvement from Braxton this year, do you take the presumed top talent on the board right now? I think his name's Olu Fashanu, the Penn State left tackle.
Yeah.
I mean, so the question is, are you willing to upgrade and move? Yeah, of course. I mean, like if that's like a dynamite player, it's a premium position. You can get better. Now you got your bookends of like high capital investment. I mean that you can make that argument. You can also make the argument for another high blue chip wide receiver. You had the Marvin Harrison Jr. everybody's excited about. You had a guy like that, or you're in a position to maybe take a top edge rusher because you definitely need to add talent there. We just got done talking about that. So, I mean, hopefully the Carolina pick provides a premium choice, then yeah, I think certainly that's the type of time we say, hey, blue chip guy, premium position, let's add it, and let's make us better. Let's take it to the next level. Then yeah, sure, absolutely.
That's what's so cool next year. The Bears have 2 first-round picks. When's the last time? Was it the Rex Grossman draft? The last time they had 2 first-round picks?
There it is, full circle. Michael Haynes.
There it is, Haynes and Grossman. I knew we'd get back to it somehow.
Good God. Yeah, I mean that's the last time I can remember. And they traded out of a higher pick, I think, so they traded down in that first round for 2 first rounders. I believe that was Byron Leftwich was the first quarterback off the board in that draft, and then Kyle Bowler, and then Rex.
Our guy Greg Gabriel had an article about that draft and how they let a lot of smoke. How they were interested in Kyle Bowler, so the Ravens jumped the Bears for Kyle Bowler because they were afraid the Bears would get Kyle Bowler, and they had no intention of taking Kyle Bowler, but they put it out there just kind of hope to trick somebody, and it worked. And they won the draft by getting their guy Rex Grossman. Yeah,
so I mean, took them to a Super Bowl. What are you gonna do?
Exactly. Yeah, nice.
All right, we'll end it there, guys. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will try to come back a little more. We're now in off season officially because a post draft. We'll try to come back here regularly and try to review the roster. I think maybe get some guests in. That might be kind of fun to get some interviews going and talk about what the expectations should be for this roster and this upcoming season. So thanks everybody for being here, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.